Mixing with Mike, plugin of the week comes from FabFilter. It's the Saturn 2. Saturn is a saturation plugin. Saturn 2 is an update to that with a whole bunch of added features. One is a superb high quality mode, which is great. So you can go there. There's a linear phase mode, which allows all the crossover points to operate in a linear phase, as well as the oversampling, which is fantastic. You can actually adjust the order of the noise filter of the crossover points between different bands. You have up to 6 crossover types. They've added in some new saturation types, including some amplifiers, some Britain American amps, some of which Tweed. You could probably figure out that that's a Fender, Plexi being Marshall, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Is that American? That's an American. Isn't Marshall British? Oh, maybe I'm mixing that up or something. Okay, could have found a fly in the ointment here. And then there's the transformer, which is added in. They've added in some other effects here, like foldback, smudge, breakdown. So these are more excessive things that you might want to do for special effects and stuff like that, for more heavy-duty distortion. And you got a full screen mode, right? So you could pop this open here and put the whole plugin full screen, which is always great. And just, loads of other stuff. They updated the whole modulation section. So if you have a modulation filter, it's like a new graphic design on it. It's got a whole bunch of different modes that you can select, envelope or transient, et cetera, et cetera. So you can make it work fast, transients, there's all kinds of things. We'll go through some of this stuff as we do things. And then you can connect these to different component elements in the mix. And what that does is it allows you to run modulation. And you think, why would you want to modulate a distortion effect? But I'll show you some pretty cool examples of where you might want to do something like that and how cool it is. All right, so we have the modulation section. We have all the normal stuff here. You could do MIDI learn for different features. We have the different bands, et cetera, et cetera. We have solo and mute for each of the individual bands, and you could just sort of create them as much as you want. So let's start go back to our default setting here to start with a clean map here. I have some drums up here, and I just wanted to kind of show you a couple things about it. Now, when you operate this, really everything centers around the drive control. So what you have here is the ability, this is just full band right now. You have the ability to turn, the band on or off, right? So red is off, right? So just get used to that. Mix control, right? So this determines you could blend in a certain percentage of it if you want to run it in parallel. The feedback control is kind of cool because the feedback control allows you to feed back output right back into input, and then it centers around a frequency, so you can create all kinds of whistling effects and other sorts of things. And the effectiveness of this will change based on what saturation component you set up here. And with each of these different things, you'll get subtle or more aggressive versions of most of these different things, giving you a pretty broad variety of different tonal characteristics. I really love the transformer. I think that's like a really great addition. And when you just want to get super messed up with things, the effects one is really great. So we have the drive control. There's a dynamics control. So with the dynamics control, as you pull it towards the left, what you end up with is more of a gating type of thing where it will sort of tighten up the distortion. And then you have a compression kind of thing if you go in the other direction, right? So that will allow you to sort of, compress the saturation, will actually make it more powerful. And you'll see, there's actually some really cool ways to use that. And within each band, you also have a tone control. So the idea of the saturation, even if you have it within like a lower frequency range, for example, just say that we split this open and split it up into a couple of bands and started processing, then what would end up happening is within that, you would create a certain saturation. It would create frequency information artifacts, right, or distortion running up the harmonic spectrum. And then the tone control would allow you to control how much of that resonates up through the spectrum. So some of these controls at times will do not much of anything at all. Sometimes they'll have a very dramatic impact, and that allows you to kind of shape what parts of the harmonic spectrum are going to be included with the saturation that you do. The more you exaggerate it, the more the effect kind of comes out. You have an output level control here just to balance things out. And can I turn this off? There we go. All right, sorry about that. Otherwise, you have all the other things about, etc., to check your type. You got your presets up here, copy AB, all the undo stuff that you're used to, full screen mode. You could set the size of the plugin display down here at the bottom, small, medium, large, extra large. That's what I'm set right now. Output controls, etc. Right? This is where you set the superb quality versus or good quality. So that just is like a qualitative thing, which would just give you less aliasing, and then linear phase mode for the crossovers and the oversampling. So pretty straightforward. So let's hear some drums with it bypassed, and then I'll kind of play around with a couple things and just kind of show you a bit of what's going on with it. Right, so I could drive something here like tape, but notice how different that sounds even if I go to like a subtle transformer effect. So just going through some of these things, you can really get, a whole other, ton of effects here, broken tube, just. Right, and you could get a whole variety of things that work in a range that can be up to mastering grade quality, where you add a subtle sense of warmth into things, or you can go extreme with it. Like just some of the other effect settings, like the smudge, actually it's kind of a strange one. It just sort of stretches the audio, so you kind of get these sort of almost random kind of artifacts from it. If anything at all. All right, so that's a little bit off the wall, this breakdown. All right, so creating some kind of pitch down effects. It's kind of cool. Fold back. And as always, you could see like all the rippling that happens there. This frequency display is really great. And obviously the color of the tone of the background changes depending upon how much saturation and whatever it is that you're driving through. So let's do something a little bit. Let's go to like a warm transformer setting. I wanted to show something here, some kind of cool ways to use this, because if you're just kind of doing some general saturation, or you maybe want to focus into particular bands to kind of work on certain things, I just wanted to show something kind of overall to show like another interesting way of using this. So it's kind of playing around with this, especially like the envelope follower. And if I take this and I kind of work with just kind of fast transients here, what I could do is kind of get this to operate here within a sort of defined range. I can make it kind of very tight, and then when I run this, I'm basically selecting a length of time or sustain, or how far that drags out. So we have this sort of transient energy right here, in which I could soften up. Right. So how aggressively does the compression sort of attack, and how quickly does it release, or how long does it sustain? And this ability to sort of have this attack release characteristic to something is really super cool, right? So if I, let's just drive this a little bit. I have to assign this here, so I'm going to assign that here to this, and then I have the amount here, right? So this is how much it will push upward, and so you'll see here a dynamic display of it driving. right? So you could basically have this ability to control the sustain of the signal as you're squashing or compressing it. And then here with the attack control, just a subtler way of softening something, right? And having that ability to go from aggressive to, subtle. And when you do this in combination with working with the dynamics, like I can really tighten something up, making it more gated. Right, so you could hear how like you just have this a lot of flexibility. This is just a really powerful way of kind of controlling what you're doing. And now if I just wanted to take this and sort of divide this up and kind of work with this here, so I have two things. I can actually sort of separate this out here, move this more as a crossover between the low frequencies and the high frequencies. Maybe what I'll do is I'll kind of put another one here, bypass this band over here, and drive this a little bit more towards the snare. Haha, there we go. Right, I'm also getting plenty of added gain in here too. So let me pull this back here like a good, that's why it sounded so dull here. So I can kind of work this a little bit. And I can actually, if I want to adjust both at the same time, I can actually just shift click, select both of them. And then that gives me the ability to sort of adjust it. I can also adjust the drive by holding the Alt key, or sorry, it's not the Alt key, Shift key? Let me go back and undo. There's one of the modifiers here. Let's say that does level. There's one of the modifiers here that allows you to do it to adjust the drive. And so, all right, I'm kind of missing that up, or maybe I misunderstood that. All right, so I have those two here, and that wasn't as spectacular sounding as I was expecting. Because this band is bypassed, that's why I'm not getting. All right, so now if I work within this, I can control the length of the snare drum. It would be easier to do it on the individual tracks, but I think here I can get the basic tone here. Let me drag out the kick a bit. All right, so I think you get a good fundamental idea of what you can do there. You can really kind of dig in and get a whole bunch of interesting sounds. Now, one other thing I wanted to focus on here was the feedback control, and this actually kind of works pretty cool. I'll just go to like a saturation, another transformer thing here for a second. And it will change based on the the and you can create all kinds of interesting things kind of out of nowhere. So this feedback control is a real fun one to kind of dig in and play with. And then if you just sort of mix that in with the dynamics. Right. You get the idea, right? You can just sort of mangle stuff. Now, in a more subtle way, there's lots of things that it's really powerful for, like working with something like a bass. And so if you're working with a bass sound, one of the things that it ends up being more of a common way of using it is to just drive some harmonic distortion so that you can basically get some frequency content that's rippling higher up in the spectrum so that you can actually image clearly the lower frequency. So part of the reason why people, like overdrive 808s and all of those sorts of things and low frequency bass notes and things like that, part of that is to create enough of a ripple effect that your brain recognizes and can localize those higher harmonics, and then it will attach it to the lower frequency, and all of a sudden that sub or lower frequency will actually image. Your brain will be able to understand it, and then it doesn't become muddy anymore. You start to be able to hear it, and this is where working with something like this can be quite powerful. So let's just put a bass in here. I'll just bypass it just to give you an idea of what it is first. And this is bypassed. Hold on, let me make sure I have the right thing. Okay, have the other one lined up there. Okay, so here we go. Right, so once I kind of ripple something in there, I can also compress it. Bring it more into focus, and now I can use the wet-dry control to mix that in with the original sound. So transformer usually works good. I could also do tape. Or if you wanted to get more aggressive with it, you could go in and just work with an amp. Probably not the way to go with this one here. Let's go with a tube. just enough to make it kind of image a bit more clearly, right? There's also cool things that you can do with just even things like vocals, especially using some of the modulation components. Let's just see here if I call up the lead vocal sound here. Everybody's favorite. What I have here is like a multi-band thing where I have a couple of bands. One is sort of acting like a working in the sibilance range, and one that's working in the presence range. Let me go over to the verse.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I. It's hard to witness with an intimate distance of friendship turn toxic, codependent. I will quit it, never fix it. I will quit it, never fix it. Jesus' yeast gave me a priest infection. He wouldn't give me bread. I'm on funeral reception.
And what I have here is I have like one modulation component here that's attached in to here that just gets it to drive, so I can actually focus this in, solo this area in, and kind of focus it around, say, a sibilance range. So look at the frequencies here. Okay, so not loud, but here. And then work on that as a way of softening it.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I. It's hard to witness with an intimate distance of friendship turn toxic, codependent. I will quit it, never fix it. I will quit it, never fix it. Jesus' yeast gave me a priest infection. He wouldn't give me bread. I'm on funeral reception.
So what I'm doing is I'm bringing in a saturation, and the saturation is kicking in from the sibilance.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I. It's hard to witness with an intimate distance of friendship turn toxic, codependent.
It's making it more present. In this case, it's not really a big sibilance problem, but I'm keying it into that particular area so I can focus the saturation just within it. And I could do a similar thing with the air frequencies up here.
I died again.
Set up another modulation if I want to. It's like the envelope follower for this, and I can attach this here to the drive control here.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I. It's hard to witness with an intimate distance of friendship turn toxic, codependent. I will quit it, never fix it. I will quit it, never fix it. Just
to bring out that really hyped kind of presence that you like out of it. Using the dynamics and using the saturation to just kind of pull air out of everything. All right. And let me unsolo.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I. It's hard to witness with an intimate distance of friendship turn toxic, codependent. I will quit it, never
just to kind of get that presence. There's some artifacts and some things in there to clean up. But I really like these. I never thought, like, why would you use modulation with distortion? But I really love this because you can really focus where the distortion occurs, especially with the envelope follower. And if you really want to dig into the other modulation things, you can set up your own LFO. You can adapt all the frequencies there, or like the shape of it, go from square wave to sine wave, and then create all kinds of other things by adding, basically almost anything that you want once you get into the envelope shaper there. And you could use like an XY controller, which you could turn into like a slider kind of control. So that if you just wanted to automate something, a parameter up or down, you could just do it that way. Write it as automation, and you could do set up a MIDI source. You can do a whole, hold on, envelope generator. That's what I meant to look at here, where you could actually shape like a whole ADSR cycle for the distortion, to really focus exactly how much of it you want, and throughout the whole attack, decay, sustain, release cycle. And it just allows you to really detail and shape anything that it is that you want to do. It's a very powerful tool when used well for especially softening things. Like, I always think about it as just like overdriving, but you can really use the saturation as a way of softening things as well. And I think that's where a lot of this type of stuff comes in very powerfully. And just with all the options when you're going through, and I'm fumbling through a few things here, still learning some of the new types, like the transformer and kind of what they're all good at. But this thing is a killer. It's really amazing. And then the linear phase mode, or the super high quality, does make a difference. Having the ability to kind of really focus in or tighten up the crossovers with the Q control, it's a no-brainer. So if you already have this, the Saturn 2 or the Saturn 1, the original one, then the upgrade is well worth it. It's a great box. So, all right, there you have it. There's the plugin of the week, FabFilter Saturn 2.